Hello, everyone. This is Johanna Lundström. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited to share today's topic with you, which is all about energy issues and specifically about adrenal fatigue. So if you have had or are having any type of energy-related issues, then you're exactly in the right place. So in a moment here, I'm going to see if I can share my screen. I have a little presentation. Okay. Bear with me. Okay, hopefully you can see that. So I want to introduce myself, first of all. As I mentioned, my name is Johanna Lundström, and I'm a holistic health coach. And I'm also certified in vocalizing, which is trauma healing, a somatic trauma healing modality. And I'm also certified in transformational coaching method and love and authenticity coaching. I'm also a mom of 9-year-old twin boys. And I'm super, super passionate about finding the root cause of symptoms and illness and disease, and whenever possible to use a natural approach, foods and herbs and supplements and lifestyle changes for healing or improving our symptoms as much as we can. And what brings me here today, I want to mention just briefly what brings me to talk about adrenal fatigue. I've experienced adrenal fatigue for sure at certain points in my life. And as you will see, over 80% of the population will experience adrenal fatigue at one point or another in their life. And I can tell you a few words about my experience. For me, it was a few years ago, and it was pretty bad. When I was waking up in the morning, I was so exhausted. You know, the feeling when you can hardly get out of bed, even if you've been supposedly sleeping a full night's sleep. And, you know, I know that many times it's hard for other people, that even family members, right, to take it seriously, maybe, because on the outside it looks like you're well. It almost looks like you're just lazy. Just get out of bed, you know. There's nothing wrong with you. But no one really knows what it feels like on the inside and how it feels to be exhausted and tired and run down. So I can definitely feel your pain if this is something that you're going through right now. And I really do hope that that the information that I am about to share with you will guide you forward to take the next best step for yourself and your healing. And you absolutely can heal. And I want to say that I would truly believe that food is medicine. So that's a little bit about me. So let's get right into it. I wanted to share a little bit about adrenals and adrenal fatigue in general. So the adrenals are really the powerhouse of the body. And the medical medium, Anthony William, he has been mentioning that he recommends that we guard our adrenals like gold at Fort Knox. And you might know that Fort Knox is where the government keeps all the gold. So it's something that's super, super important. It's an organ that doesn't get so much attention, maybe. And the adrenals are a key component of the endocrine system. And what do the adrenals do? Well, they're in charge of producing hormones that are critical for our health. And the adrenals produce hormones like cortisol, that you might know as the stress hormone, and also adrenaline and other hormones that are in charge of regulating our sex hormones, testosterone and estrogen. So they're really, really important. And I want to just show a little graphic here also. The adrenal glands are little lumps of tissue glands on top of the kidneys. So that's where they're located. We have two of them, and they kind of work together. And whenever they work beautifully in a way that they kind of compensate. If one of the adrenals is undercompensating and not running, the other one takes over. So as long as we don't get the adrenals too fatigued, then we can kind of get away with a lot of things until the adrenals will kick and scream to get our attention. So what happens then when the adrenals get worked, too overworked or too overextended? Well, the adrenals then have the equivalent of a nervous breakdown. So basically what happens then is the adrenals would either produce too much or too little hormones for what the situation require. So in an ideal world, the adrenals would produce the right amount of adrenaline that's needed for every given situation in life. But that does not happen when our adrenals have been overextended and overworked and they start to behave erratically. And I want to mention one important thing, and that is when we lack glucose, when there is a shortage of glucose in the body, the adrenals are forced to kick in to compensate for the lack of glucose in the body. And what the adrenals do then is that they release adrenaline. And that makes us feel like, oh, we have energy, until, we go take it too far and our adrenals get so worked down that they won't be able to keep up anymore. And that's when we can get real severe adrenal fatigue. So let's look for a moment at some of the symptoms for adrenal fatigue. So the most obvious one might be lack of energy, that many of us know, but also weakness, constipation, trouble concentrating, becoming easily confused, forgetfulness, insomnia, hoarse voice, poor digestion, and depression, as well as trouble completing basic tasks that we could once handle easily, and also not feeling rested when waking up from sleep and relying on naps throughout the day. So all these can be signs of adrenal fatigue. And you might notice here that some of these symptoms, especially if you're middle-aged, they're very closely linked to some of the symptoms that we see in perimenopause or menopause even, and that we normally are discarded as, oh, that's hormonal, right? So let's continue. There's another list of symptoms that I wanted to look over that might not be so easy to link to adrenal fatigue, but the one is when you crash early part of the day or throughout your day, or you feel tired all day at work, but you get like a second wind or have more energy at the end of the day. Or you might be really, really tired at night, but have trouble falling asleep. Or like in my case that I explained, that you feel really tired even after a full night's sleep. Or and things like continual sweating in the armpits, even after doing like light tasks. Another sign of adrenal fatigue can be when you're continuously thirsty. And no matter how much water you drink, you can't seem to quench your thirst. Or you have continuously dry mouth, or you might be frequently craving salt. Another symptom can be blurry vision or difficulty focusing eyesight, and also continual craving. This is a big one. Continual craving for stimulants, caffeine, cigarettes, caffeinated sodas and drinks, sugary snacks, or even prescription drugs, uppers like amphetamines. So take a moment to just notice and make a mental note or write down the symptoms that you are experiencing. And if you're experiencing a couple of these, and maybe someone on the previous slide too, then chances are that you're experiencing adrenal fatigue. And as I mentioned, a lot of people will be at one point or another be experiencing adrenal fatigue in their life. So as I mentioned, perimenopause, in many cases, this is misdiagnosed, and often what we're really experiencing is adrenal fatigue. And luckily for you, today we're going to look at the top 3 things that contribute to overburdening and overextending the adrenal glands, and also what to do to heal. So why is it important to take care of our adrenals? I mentioned that we should guard them like they guard gold at Fort Knox. Well, toxic adrenaline is really corrosive to the internal organs. So it's not just the adrenals that get affected when they're overworked. Also the liver and other organs need to work much harder when the adrenals are struggling. And corrosive adrenaline can also lead to the development of osteoporosis later in life. And this, if you're in your 40s now is the time to start thinking about these things, because these types of things start decades before you get diagnosed with something like osteoporosis. And I want to mention something also, that one sign of overextended adrenals can be when you have low libido. So a sign of the libido returning can be when your adrenals are healing, right? So that's something to keep in mind. So the importance of taking care of your adrenals, I want to mention 3 examples. And the first one is out of control adrenals flood the system with too much adrenaline, and that burns away at our neurotransmitter chemicals when we have so much adrenaline running around in our body. And neurotransmitter chemicals, they're really crucial for us to feeling good and feeling okay, right? And that can lead to a bout of depression. So that's the reason why we have feeling down or depression as one of the symptoms of adrenal fatigue. And then the other example is why it's important to take care of our adrenals is when the adrenals underperform, that can create a thyroid hormone shortage at a cellular level. And you can experience things like weight gain, hair loss, depression, brittle nails, rough and thinning skin, feeling cold, fluctuating blood sugar. And you might experience all of these things, even though the tests at the doctor's office come back as normal. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. The third case that I want to mention is when the adrenals get out of control, overextended, they can produce too little cortisol in some cases. And cortisol, even if it's known as the stress hormone, it's not a bad thing. It's a necessary life-supporting hormone. And when we have too little cortisol, it can create havoc, since cortisol plays a really important role when it comes to converting the thyroid storing hormone T4 into usable T3, sorry. And also allowing the T3 to charge up your cells. So these are some of the reasons why it's so important to actually take care of our adrenals, not just if we're experiencing these symptoms that I've mentioned, but if we're experiencing any type of health issue. So this is a little overview at a glance why the adrenal glands are important. The first one is thyroid function, and we mentioned a little bit about that. Also metabolism, mood, as we looked at, stress management. So when adrenaline is on, we're in stress response. The executive part of our brain is offline, and we operate from a more older version of our brain that is not in charge of our emotions so much, and not great for the adrenals. It's also important for a glucose regulation. And also inflammation. When we constantly have adrenaline flooding the system, that actually serves as fuel for pathogens that we all have inside of our bodies, which contributes to inflammation and symptoms and chronic disease. So that is a really important point to keep in mind when it comes to the adrenals. So let's look at the top 3 things that put a strain on our adrenal glands. The first one being stress. And stress is obviously such a big topic. There's so many different types of stress, right? But stress is the primary trigger for the adrenal glands. Number 2 is the fact that adrenaline for many people is running all the time. And we'll look at that in a little bit more detail in a moment. And some people even get addicted to their own adrenaline. Adrenaline is highly, highly addictive. It's like I think it's like a class 1 drug type addiction. So it's no wonder that we get caught up in the stress cycle. And once we're in it, it's hard to kind of break free, because we get addicted to it and almost feel like this is our normal state of being, right? When it's not. We're not supposed to be operating from that place. It's not the greatest for our body and mind. And the third thing that put a strain on our adrenals is strong emotions, like, for example, anxiety. That also, if we walk around being anxious about everything, that also can run your adrenals and put a strain on them, especially if it's ongoing, right? So let's look at the first one, stress. And I'm asking a question here, if stress and overwhelm, if that's the new normal. It's almost like we have, you get a badge of honor from, being busy and taking on a lot of things and getting a lot of things done, right? Doing. And that's kind of feeding the stress response when we're in a constant state of keeping on going, right? And getting things done and maybe not taking time for ourselves. And many of us get stuck and have that as our normal way of operating, our normal way of being in overwhelm. And this means that if we operate from overwhelm, then our adrenals are constantly running and secreting adrenaline. And so what are the reasons? I want to look at some of the reasons as to why we get stressed. And what I've seen is a lot of the time, especially for women maybe, is when we have lack of healthy boundaries and we take on more than we can. We do so many things, and we might say yes even when we want to say no. There's school events, there's volunteering, there's teacher appreciation week, there's gifts, there's birthdays, there's sports and things to drive kids to, and there's a lot going on, right? So it's important to learn how to establish and uphold healthy boundaries. Another reason why we get stressed is we're simply moving too fast, a lot of us. It's almost like we stay up late just to be able to check one more thing off the to-do list, right? But the thing is, that to-do list, even if you might check another thing off today before you go to bed, you might add another few things. So it's like an ongoing thing. It's important to look at this and see what our patterns are, so that we can identify that and do something about it. And then I want to mention also another thing that have us be stressed is the push through mentality. Many times our body might be even telling us that, giving us signs that to slow down, right? But society has almost been teaching us that, you just push through and just get one more thing done, or just do this. But many times then the body will just say no and you get sick, right? Which can also be a sign to tell you when you notice a little bit of symptoms, right? If you notice a little bit of a scratchy throat, maybe that's the body's way of telling you, stop what you're doing and go get some rest, right? And a few more things that I want to mention that causes stress is binge watching Netflix, for example, especially if it's something suspenseful or, it's building storyline that makes it, that can also run our adrenals. And many of us start to binge watch and watch until the whole series is done, right? Also running or doing strenuous exercise first thing in the morning without having had any glucose, that runs the adrenals. Because as I mentioned, when there is a lack of glucose, the adrenals will kick in and compensate. Also things like social media, notifications on our cell phone, that type of thing, also leads us to feel stressed, because there's always someone wanting us, another thing to get done. So that's another thing to keep in mind, right? And the last thing that I want to mention is that our own negative thoughts sometimes cause us stress and run the adrenals. So I want you to take a moment to just tune in with yourself and notice, what's the number one stress in your life right now? And it might be something that I mentioned, might be something that I have not mentioned. We are all different. So take a moment to just take some inventory. So the second reason to why we have our adrenals are getting overburdened is that we have many of us have adrenaline running all of the time, and some of the reasons for this is, and this is probably the biggest thing. If you only have one takeaway from this training, when we're not eating at regular intervals, which means every hour and a half to 2 hours, then your bloodstream will run low on glucose, and then the adrenals will kick in to compensate for the lack of glucose. And I've said this a few times, and I keep saying it until it's drilled in. So this is a huge, huge, huge thing. If you take one step, make it be this, okay? Hugely important. It's an awesome way to support your adrenals so that your adrenals can heal, start to heal. The second thing that have the adrenals running all the time is caffeine. And so many of us are addicted to caffeine. And we know, I'm not just talking about caffeine in coffee. There's also caffeine in sugar, in chocolate, especially in dark chocolate, in green tea, in matcha, in other caffeinated drinks. And coffee is the number one addiction. Probably, I don't know if only in the US or if in the world, that puts a strain and burdens the adrenals. We get energy and then we crash. And what do we crave when we're crashed? More energy and another, like coffee, right? We go up, or sugar. It works kind of like in the same way. So another big thing when it comes to energy is, of course, not getting enough sleep. And sleep interruption is linked to heightened levels of adrenaline. So when we don't get enough sleep, that will also affect our, not only, like, it also affects like our blood sugar. It will make us much more hungry during the day, but also in terms of adrenaline, it has a big impact. And of course, prolonged stress. If we have ongoing stress in our life, like going through a divorce or taking care of a loved one who's sick, that can continuously also flood our system with adrenaline. And then another couple of things that I want to mention is toxins. And this might sound a little far-fetched, but when we are exposed to a toxin or we ingest a toxin, the body sees it as a threat, and adrenaline is released in the body. And another thing, when we're not honoring our fullness, when we're overeating, that also creates a burst of adrenaline. So yeah, what I mentioned before is that adrenaline addiction is real, and it's like a Schedule I drug, and it really keeps us in a downward spiral of exhaustion. And you also see here how caffeinated drinks and foods like chocolate or cacao, they're really, really aggressive to the nervous system. So if we are experiencing adrenal fatigue issues, energy issues, it's a very good idea to either lower the caffeine or ideally skip it altogether, because since it contributes to adrenal fatigue. And the third thing that contributes to the adrenals getting run down is strong emotions. And strong emotions such as fear, anger, anxiety, hatred, guilt, shame, and all these emotions, the strong ones, they trigger adrenaline. And so if we're, for example, really emotional and crying a lot, that triggers the adrenals. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to cry necessarily, but if we're experiencing a lot of energy issues and adrenaline issues, then this is something that's really important to learn how to deal with in a way that doesn't put a strain on the adrenals. So and also this type of adrenaline can actually act as a trigger to symptoms you're already experiencing. So if you're under intense emotional stress, for example, that can trigger migraines. It's not the root cause of migraines, but it can act as a trigger. And my husband experiences this, for example. So we've looked at the problem, now look at the solutions. So when it comes to stress, one of the most important things is to learn how to slow down. It is of the essence to learn and to commit to prioritizing self-care. It's not selfish with self-care. How can it be selfish to give the best version of us to our family and friends and loved ones? If we are stressed, worked out, overwhelmed, we're going to be so much more likely to snap, so much more likely to say things we don't mean, so much more likely to do things we don't want to do, right? So it's hugely important to learn also how to tune into your body's signals, because if we are able to tune into our body's signals and listen to what the body is trying to tell us, the body never lies. If we're able to do that, and that's one of the things that I do when I work with clients, tune in and learn how to decipher what your body is telling you. And there is this saying, right? If you listen when your body is talking, you won't have to hear it scream, right? Because it's almost like you're going to get worse and worse until you take action, right? Until you get the message from what that the body is trying to send you. So learning to set and uphold healthy boundaries at home and at work. It's not just with friends or things coming externally at you, but also within the actual family unit. Many times it can be a lot of stress and frustration building up. So that's something to look at. Go to bed earlier. So many women in particular that I've spoken to, they have a tendency to stay up late because that's the only alone time they get, the only me time they get. And especially for people who are introverts, they need time to recharge their batteries and to have that time alone and to do the things they want to do for themselves. But make sure that you incorporate that, but not at the expense of your own energy, and learn how to take steps gradually to go to sleep earlier if that's something that would benefit you, if that's something you have an issue with. And also to create a supportive morning routine or incorporate quiet time, either in the morning, even if it's just 2 minutes, or at night, so that you have that quiet time where you tune in and do the things like you enjoy doing, or journaling, or reading a book, or doing something, meditating, whatever it might be. And I want to actually share with you an amazing tool that I use all the time, that you can use to actually trick your nervous system to believe that you are in a relaxed state, even if you're not, believe it or not. So the autonomic nervous system has two branches. We have the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest, the relaxation response, and we have the sympathetic, which is the stress response. And we want the parasympathetic branch to be on, because that's when we're relaxed, right? So one of the tricks that we can use for fooling the central nervous system is to use conscious breathing to do this. And the way it works is that once we adopt this conscious rhythmic breathing, it's almost like the nervous system will go, oh, I thought you were a nervous wreck, but you're breathing like a calm person, so you must be relaxed. And then it turns on the parasympathetic branch, the rest and digest, where we have optimal digestion, where optimal assimilation of nutrients and so on. And it doesn't even make sense to heal in a stress state. It's not possible. Healing can only happen in a relaxed state. So going back to the tool, the conscious breathing, it's called the 5-5-7 breath. So the way it works is this: you inhale to the count of 5, you hold your breath to the count of 5, and you exhale to the count of 7. So it's important for the exhale to be a little longer than the inhale and the hold, because this really is what will calm the nervous system. And it's also important that you repeat what each breath cycle not each breath cycle, that you repeat each cycle, for 10 times, which makes it about 2 minutes in total that you do this. So the way it works is you inhale through the nose, you hold at the top of the inhale, and then you exhale through the mouth, and then you repeat that breath cycles 10 times, and that will turn on the relaxation response. And I would love for you to try this and let me know how it goes, because I love this, because you can do it on the go, you can do it whenever. I do it in the car, sometimes, many times at night before I go to bed. When I'm feeling nervous about something, I do it all the time, and it's an awesome tool to use and have in your toolbox. So I also want to mention this huge solution, which is related to the adrenaline running all the time. As I mentioned, when the blood is running low on glucose, the adrenals will kick in and produce or release adrenaline, which is very corrosive. So how can we prevent this? Well, by eating or by grazing every hour and a half to 2, and ideally have it be an adrenal snack that contains potassium, sugar, and sodium. So we have a few examples here of an adrenal snack. For example, an apple, celery, and dates, or an orange, a little bit of avocado and spinach. Grazing is really truly critical to healing, especially energy issues and adrenal fatigue. And I also want to mention, if for some reason you cannot have a snack, or it's not an option, then the next best thing is then to drink coconut water, or to drink lemon water. For 16 ounces of water, you can put in the juice of 1 lemon, squeeze in the juice of 1 lemon into 16 ounces of water, and then you can add a teaspoon of honey or something like that to get the glucose, and drink that. And glucose act as a cut-off switch for unwanted adrenaline. So this is something to really keep with you and remember and experiment with. And I want to mention also, when it comes to the coconut water, make sure it's not pink, make sure also not red or pink, because those are rancid, those are no good. I know they sell them at Whole Foods, but yeah, don't buy those. And also read the ingredient list to make sure that it doesn't have, ideally, no added things, even if it's vitamin C, because those are normally like cheap vitamins that the body can't even use. So ideally, just go for a coconut water like this one, for example. It has, the only thing it has on the label, on the ingredient list, is organic coconut water. It doesn't have to be organic at all, but if it has one thing on the ingredient list, that's ideal. So I want to get into foods a little bit more. There is one more food that is amazing and offers amazing stress assistance, and that is celery juice. And celery juice is truly amazing for helping to heal the adrenals, because it can help neutralize adrenaline in the intestinal tract. And on top of that, celery juice also helps to cleanse out toxins, which is another one of those adrenaline producers in the body. And there's also a number of foods that are considered the best choices for adrenal health and for supporting the adrenals so that the adrenals can heal. And those are sprouts, asparagus, wild blueberries, bananas, garlic, broccoli, kale, raspberries, blackberries, romaine lettuce, red-skinned apples. So those are all amazing for helping to heal your adrenals. It's really crucial to start taking steps to focus on eating the right foods for adrenal fatigue, and especially focusing on berries, fruits, good, herbs, and also foods that are hydrating, like melons are super, super hydrating. And food really is and can be medicine if we let it be. And I want to mention, when it comes to foods too, that it's really important for you to get the most energy and the most energy out of the glucose that you eat. It's really important that you lower the amount of fats that you eat, especially in the morning, because then the glucose will be able to use up as energy in the body. And as I mentioned, obviously, giving up or reducing caffeinated drinks can also really help you kickstart healing, and so that you can regain your energy. And I have a slide here when it comes to, these are, the source is the Medical Medium's book, Secret Behind Chronic and Mystery Illness and How to Finally Heal. And these supplements are really, really helpful. Now, it's not about jumping in and starting to take all these at once, not recommended at all. But they can provide amazing support while you're healing, or if you feel like you're not healing, because the supplements in general, they do speed up healing in general. So I don't know which one is my favorite, but I can say that lemon balm is an amazing, amazing healing tincture that you can use. You can, well, it doesn't have to be a tincture. You can take it as a tea. Traditional medicinals have lemon balm tea. I take tinctures and I give it to my children too for anxiety. And I even do lemon balm shock therapy on my kids if they're feeling anxious. I give them 2 droppers full. You can do it every few hours. Licorice root is an amazing, amazing supplement that support the adrenals, probably the number one. Ashwagandha is another one that helps the body adapt and cope with stress. Magnesium is calming to the nervous system. Nettle leaf contains so many micronutrients, and even iron and stuff. When you're feeling tired, sometimes you have deficiencies in iron, then I would steep the tea bag, even sometimes overnight, and have it be an infusion. That will really, really benefit you. Yeah, you can see there's a number of supplements here. Have a look and see if there's anything here that holds your attention more than anything else. The third solution that I want to offer you before we finish off today is strong emotions. And as I mentioned, strong emotions put a strain on the adrenals. And here I want to make it very clear that it's not about avoiding, pushing down, not feeling emotions or anything like that. And I actually, just the other day, I was speaking to one of the last clients that I work with on adrenal fatigue, and it was almost like she was avoiding certain emotions to protect her adrenals, but that's not actually the way to go. If we're looking to protect our adrenals, it's important to learn how to manage our emotions in a way that's supportive for the body, mind, and spirit. It's important to learn how to become the witness of our emotions, and to be okay with allowing, because most of the issues that arise is that we don't want to look at our feelings. We don't want to feel them. We don't want to deal with them. We just want to pretend they're not there. And that doesn't solve the problem. So it's crucial to learn how to let the emotions, witness them arise and pass, let them pass through you, as opposed to engaging with the emotions, letting them take over. And, an emotion is the body's response to the mind, right? And the only purpose of an emotion is to be truly felt. That's it. Yet most of us are in the habit, and me included, of avoiding them, not dealing with them, pushing them aside because I can't deal with this right now, right? And then the time never comes sometimes, many times. And yeah, so a lot of the times strong emotions, they come from, we might have a thought, we think something, oh my God, she's thinking this about me, or oh my God, this happened. We perceive something, we either hear something or something happens, or And then there's always an emotion attached to what happened or to the thought that we think. And, you know, it can be disappointment, can be shame, frustration, anger, even whatever. And that leads us to behave a certain way. And it might be that we behave when we get angry, we scream, right? Which is a big trigger for the adrenals to produce adrenaline, right? Corrosive to the internal organs and contributes to overburdening the adrenals. So learning how to manage our emotions is of the essence for healing adrenal fatigue, especially if this is something that you struggle with. Some people don't have so much of a struggle with this, but I think particularly women tend to have more of an issue with these types of things. And I can mention also, when we have an uncomfortable emotion that we don't want to deal with, sometimes we use foods that are not in alignment with healing adrenal fatigue, or not in alignment with calm mind, and that causes stress on the body, like processed carbs or alcohol and sugary things, right? And that have us feel a certain way. We kind of get stuck in that never-ending cycle, right? So it's time to break that cycle now. So how do we do that? Well, I have here an emotional self-command formula, which can be a good start in some cases, especially if you notice that you have a tendency to think negative thoughts or interpret things negatively, which when I was growing up, my mom used to many times see things negatively, and I absolutely absorbed that. And I noticed myself, I have to really switch out, but that can actually be seen as a good thing, right? You can work with your mind, and the brain is plastic. You can change it, even if it's something that you've been doing for a long time. It's possible to change, and I know you can change it. So if this is something you're struggling with, the first step is always awareness. Without awareness, we have no choice but to continue on in our habituated patterns of what we're always used to doing, right? So awareness is the first step, to start noticing how do we react? What are the thoughts we're thinking, you know? And identify, you know, your triggers. If there's specific stress triggers that you're aware of, is it, you know, your kids or your family situation, or something at work, a person at work, whatever. Identify what is your main stress trigger and start working with the one that's the number one stress trigger. And then pattern interrupt. Once you have noticed, pattern interrupting is kind of doing something. I like to use, like, even rubbing my fingers together or taking a deep breath. When I do that, it's like you create a space between the trigger and your reaction. And in that space, you have a choice. You can choose to not scream when your kids drive you insane, right? Or you can choose to deal with the situation differently. You can choose even a more supportive thought, a thought that doesn't take you down a negative spiral, you know? So yeah, so the last one is choose again. Here, you don't have to always automatically scream when your kid, you know, throws something on the floor or messes up your kitchen or whatever, right? You can train your brain to react differently, to be more reactive, to be less reactive. And I was just thinking about something else right now that I want to say. That's I get sidetracked. And something that can really, really help that is supplements. I'm talking B12, high doses, even like taking much more than the prescribed amount. Also lemon balm, amazing tools to use for this. Yeah, so I would love to hear how you do if you try out this self-command formula. And it's all about practice, repetition. This is something that it doesn't happen overnight. It's something that we need to continuously work on until we notice results and we start behaving and reacting in a way that's more supportive of our adrenals. So yeah, I hope you find this this presentation useful, and that you are walking away with lots of things that you feel like you can use and try. And if you need any support, I would love to talk to you. So just let me know if you're interested in any additional support to help heal your adrenal fatigue or any other health issue you might be having. So yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you, and I'm grateful that you were here. All right, take care. Bye.